Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first annual Business Risks Conference, Business Risks 2020, covering the insurance, legal, and finance challenges created by various cybersecurity requirements for businesses. And of course, it wouldn't be 2020 if we didn't also discuss those risks created by COVID, which both of our keynote speakers today will discuss. Please go to magic.cnf.io to follow along with the agenda today. As we get through each session on that agenda list, there will be a live Q&A in each of those, and that's where you will post your questions and where our experts will be answering them. You can also go there to join our trivia battles. We'll have 3 trivia battles today to win valuable prizes from some of our sponsors. And if you are on social media and following along today, please use the hashtag BizRisks20. I am your co-host, Graham Dodge, Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Gigabit Innovation Collaboratory, or MAGIC for short. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to workforce development in cybersecurity and in technology innovation in the gigabit fiber community of Westminster, Maryland. I am joined today by Janet Ladd, Senior Director of Corporate Services and Workforce Development at Carroll Community College. Hello, Janet. How are you today?
Hey, Graham. Good to be with you. Really appreciate the opportunity. You're going to hear more about all of our sponsors, including Advantage C and Miller Resources for Entrepreneurs. And Graham, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know we have a lot to cover.
Thanks. So we have some partners to go through real quick. MAGIC, of course, who I already introduced, my organization. You can go to magicinc.org to learn more about MAGIC. And then, of course, Carroll Community College, Janet's organization. College's mission is to empower learners, change lives, and build community. Carroll Community College provides accessible, high-quality educational opportunities to advance careers, enrich lives, and strengthen the community that we serve. Carroll offers academic and career preparation, leading to transfer to 4-year colleges and universities, and for direct entry into professional opportunities. Carroll Community College is located in Westminster, Maryland. Please visit www.carrollcc.edu for more information. And then we have our partners at Advantage C, a service of Carroll Community College, which is a results-oriented workforce development and business consultation service. Advantage C has helped countless Carroll County businesses with their training and organizational development needs. Please visit carrollcc.edu/business-services/advantage-c. And Miller Resources for Entrepreneurs, another service of the community college, is a go-to resource for entrepreneurs and small business owners who want to launch and build their businesses. Miller can provide you with the planning, training, and community resources to help you start, grow, and be more profitable. Contact Miller at 410-386-8012. And finally, CyberJobs, which is an initiative developed by MAGIC, funded by the USDA Rural Business Development Grant. The goal of CyberJobs is to help rural small businesses in Maryland's Congressional District 8 to assess their cybersecurity needs, identify and create new entry-level job opportunities for junior professionals, apprenticeships, and student internships. Please contact MAGIC for more information at info@magicinc.org. Now, let's thank our sponsors, without whom any of this would be possible today. We are actually in this lovely virtual soundstage built by Hatch Exhibits, who is our platinum sponsor. We are 6 feet apart. It was built during COVID. We have a special air filtration system to suck up all the COVID and filter it out. We have high-speed internet access here. It's all dedicated, and a high-end, state-of-the-art control room over there. Hatch Exhibits helps clients go to market and hold beautiful retail spaces, trade show floors and exhibits, as well as displays, custom fabricated pieces, and more. We listen to our clients' needs and guide them through the customized design process, build environments that both suit their needs and exceed expectations, and manage every detail so that they don't have to. Design, build, and manage all under one roof. Learn more at hatchexhibits.com. And another sponsor, the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce, exists to promote a sound economic environment in which our business community can prosper. Relationships are the fabric of every successful business. Therefore, we place a premium on creating opportunities and experience for our members to make meaningful connections and build relationships with professionals. Please visit carrollcountychamber.org. And Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit. At Farm Credit, we've got over 100 years of experience serving rural America. And because we are a cooperative, your success means our success. That's why we're more than just your lender. we are your partner. Join Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit at their upcoming Agriculture and Cybersecurity Virtual Symposium on November 23rd and 24th. Please visit mafc.com for more information. Janet?
Thanks, Graham. I just want to say the exhibit place where we are right now, Hatch Exhibits, beautiful facility, really top notch. And I just want another shout out to the Hatch Exhibit team that's over in the booth. Thank you for all your hard work to get us to this point. All right, I could not be more honored to introduce our first keynote speaker, Ron Gula. Ron is president at Gula Tech Adventures, which focuses on cyber technology, strategy, and policy. Since 2017, GTA has invested in dozens of cyber startups and funds and supported multiple cyber nonprofits and projects. From 2002 to 2016, Ron was the co-founder and CEO of Tenable Network Security. He helped grow the company to 20,000 customers, raise $300 million in venture capital, and grow revenue to $100 million, setting the company up for an IPO in 2018. Prior to Tenable, Ron was a cyber industry pioneer and developed one of the first commercial network intrusion detection systems called Dragon. He ran risk mitigation for the first cloud company, was deploying network honeypots in the mid-90s for the Department of Defense, and was a penetration tester for the National Security Agency. He got to participate in some of the nation's first cyber exercises. Ron is involved in a variety of cyber nonprofits today and think tanks, including Defending Digital Campaigns, the Cyber Moonshot, the National Security Institute, and the Wilson Center. Needless to say, amazing experience coming your way. Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. We can do a fist bump, right?
Yes.
There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much to Carroll County Community College and the Magic organization. I'm very happy to be here today. For those watching live at home, it is the beginning of November. To those of you watching this in the future, good luck, right? 2020 is almost over, but I've got a lot of good news to kind of share with you. This morning, we're going to talk about how COVID kind of messed things up for cybersecurity, but in many ways, how it's kind of setting the stage for a renaissance in what I think is going to be a new wave of cybersecurity prosperity. As we talked about during the introduction, thanks again for that, I got my career at the National Security Agency, and my start on cybersecurity, that is. It wasn't called cybersecurity back then, it was called information security, and it had a whole plethora of names. My job was basically to break into different types of military and government networks and tell people where they could do better. That kind of set me up to be a product entrepreneur. I got the chance to start a whole bunch of companies, including Tenable. And I think that there's going to be even more cyber companies that are going to be here in the United States. Tenable exposed me to a great different number of cybersecurity problems, both in the finance industry, the healthcare industry, the open source, the academia, and so on. And there was a lot that I learned doing that, trying to help people measure their risk. And Tenable, in many ways, set not only me, but my wife and I, Cindy, to do Gula Tech Adventures. And at first, when we kind of launched this, we made a lot of noise about investing in entrepreneurs coming out of the DoD and the intelligence community. But today, we are very, very focused on defending the nation, anything we can do to defend the nation in cybersecurity. And that could be investing in the next generation of cyber companies. It could also be making grants to cybersecurity nonprofits. I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about for the future of cybersecurity is not only tied with government, with commercial, but also nonprofit. And we'll talk about how COVID kind of ties all this together. So, before COVID, cybersecurity was actually making some progress. If I may, let's take you back to 2019, which just seems so long ago. But in 2019, the cybersecurity industry was getting a lot of things right. We knew that we had a workforce development problem. And we knew that it started in K through 12. We knew that the people teaching our children had just gone through a big reorganization focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But there wasn't a lot of computer science. There wasn't any cybersecurity in there. And we definitely saw this as a problem. And a lot of organizations really kind of got involved with trying not to just do a pipeline, whether it's retraining vendors or retraining veterans, but also trying to recruit more people to the workforce. We're making some progress there as an industry. Another big topic we had in 2019 was how much government involvement should we have in the security of our products. People talk about, backdoors in cell phones and backdoors in social media platforms. Do we have a right to privacy as citizens? But at the same time, if somebody was molesting our children or planning a terrorist attack, we would kind of want the government and the FBI to have access to this kind of data so they can defend the country. This was a debate that was really getting ready to be heated up that got taken off the table once COVID started. For those of you who are disciples of cyber standards, in 2019 it was very, very commonplace to talk about the NIST cybersecurity framework. This is sort of the culmination of almost 25 years of work. How can we describe and measure cybersecurity for a large enterprise, for a small nonprofit, for yourself? And we had a lot of derivatives of this. We had Sunil use cybersecurity matrix, which made this very, very comprehensive thing really, really easy to understand at the boardroom level. This was definitely getting very mainstream. We also had the rise of the hunt teams. Basically something that I blogged about called the cyber poverty line and the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We started to understand as an industry that even with great standards like the NIST cybersecurity framework, that by itself is not enough. You have to have people on your staff who constantly assume that you're being compromised, and they have to hunt for that. So one of the things I did in our blog about the cyber poverty line is I said, no matter who you are, whether it's a doctor's office or the largest banks in the world, you have to have hygiene to keep your network basically secure and running well, but you also have to assume that the hackers are going to break through, and you have to have a hunt team that goes out there. So MITRE ATT&CK has done a lot of this. I just recently got to participate in the Purple Team Summit, which was last week, and there was a lot of great talks on both how the red team, sort of the offense simulators, and the defense can learn from each other. So this was all going really, really well in 2019. Another big thing that was happening is we were doing something called the Great Cloud Migration. Now, if you think about enterprise technology, an email server that's on-premise, a database server that's on-premise, you have to expend a tremendous amount of resources to care for that server, maintain that server, and it's probably not your core business. Your core business might be making cars, making popcorn, teaching children. It's not IT. So one of the benefits of giving that information over to SaaS platforms like Salesforce and Office 365, as well as making your applications take advantage of cloud resources such as Amazon and Google Cloud, was a great benefit. And this is still ongoing during COVID, but this is really starting to hit its heyday in 2019. You had the emergence of SecDevOps. You had the emergence of a whole bunch of companies, both open source and commercial, that were offering solutions to allow people to measure the data that they had in the cloud and actually treat that the same way they had a server on-prem. And then finally, the 2019, we just got some inkling of what disinformation was and how much control the social media platforms had over what we saw and what we experienced. I mean, most of 2019 was dominated by stories of artificial intelligence and deep fakes and the ability to manipulate what we see. And if you can manipulate what is seen, you can manipulate what a population thinks. So there's been a lot of awareness in 2019. We also had the birth of the CMMC standard. And because I'm speaking publicly and I get to control the slides, I can say CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. Now this is a mouthful, but what this was is a way for the DoD to basically certify any supplier to the DoD, whether you're building a computer or an F-16 or just screws to go on into wood to put there, basically allow the DoD to have some sort of confidence that its suppliers have basic hygiene. And CMMC was on its way to really do well here, and then COVID hit, and they kind of lost a little bit of steam because this was seen by some as a burden for folks who are maybe IT is not their first thing. However, if we actually got CMMC out, this would actually not only have a benefit for the DoD, but since most DoD suppliers are also suppliers to Walmart and to the car manufacturers. It would have strengthened the country. And CMMC is still going strong. It just lost a little bit of its steps with that. And then finally, two things I had a front row seat to that were going on in 2019 were the Cyber Moonshot and the Cybersecurity Solarium. Now, the Cyber Moonshot was a combination of vendors, academics, and government folks who tried to have a goal of making the internet safe and secure within the next 10 years. And these things started to happen. They're still going on right now, but the first few meetings happened in 2018 and 2019. There's been a lot of work. This was done as something the Vice President and the President's NSTAC Advisory Board were pushing. And then the Cybersecurity Solarium, they actually literally published their findings right as COVID was. I can still remember going to some of their kickoff events and people were starting to wear masks and not handshake or anything like that. But the Cybersecurity Solarium was a bipartisan effort where Republicans and Democrats, people from the White House, people from the DoD, people from DHS, working on how can we make cybersecurity better for the country. And they looked at it from the extremes of, is cyber as impactful as a nuclear weapon? Like, what happens if cybersecurity attacked the economy and we had to rebuild the economy from the ground up because nothing was working, all the way down to what can we do to increase more cybersecurity training for our kids in K through 12? And so there's a lot of information about there that they've published, but unfortunately, as soon as it started going, COVID hit and kind of took the wind out of everybody's sails. So what happened, right? So COVID came, and what really happened, everybody has a personal story. If you have children or you're working from home, I like to talk about this, that mom and dad became the IT department. And in many ways, this is a good thing, because one of the things that I think limits kids wanting to go into cybersecurity or even IT is the lack of role models. I mean, their typical child going through K-12 does not have as good of an IT experience as Google or Microsoft gives them, perhaps on an Xbox or even Apple on an iPad. It does not inspire folks to go in there. But seeing mom or dad, setting up the router, increasing the bandwidth, patching the computers, perhaps investing in lighting so the kids look good on their Zoom. These are all things that I think the general population took for granted. And IT, when it works well, it's invisible. And when cybersecurity works well, it's invisible. And now people are experiencing this firsthand. So as much as that set folks back, it also gave a lot of new people a front row seat to what goes on. And I think it's going to be good for the industry long term. Now, we all personally experienced different forms of CIA. Now, folks who are watching this who are cybersecurity students, they'll know that CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And if you think about any type of hack that you've seen in a movie or any type of story you've heard about hacking, confidentiality basically is keeping a secret. Integrity is changing the data at rest. Like, imagine hacking into your school and changing your grades. And availability, of course, is your data available? It also impacts us in many ways. With COVID, there was a lot of relaxation of healthcare standards, healthcare security standards called HIPAA. Actually, they weren't relaxed. They were just kind of forgiven a little bit depending on where you live. And we actually had a lot more access to our data. And in some states, people would be able to log on to their portals and see their doctor's data, their test results, their COVID results. But in years past, some states didn't really let this happen, but this happened to relax a number of different things. We've all had stories or had personal involvements where we've gone into a Zoom, perhaps with school, and we've seen it Zoom Bob. Perhaps somebody put some profanity or some racist material, or perhaps something that was just offensive to people. And that's an example of keeping a secret there. That Zoom event, that if you just share that URL, anybody can come in and join that. And of course, there's been continued to be stories about hacking and denial of service attacks. We had President Trump's web face was defaced during the election. So there's been a lot of different impacts of confidentiality, integrity, and availability through here. This in turn, though, has caused corporations to adopt something called zero trust. And what happened is, if you speak to a bank or you speak to an organization that has maybe 10,000 employees or 100,000 employees, and now they're working from home, there's this concern that somehow the internet that they're going on from their house to the corporate office or just directly to the internet is not very secure. Now, most organizations had a VPN, And just having everybody connect into the corporate office to then go back out to the internet, that's called hairpinning in some circles. It's inefficient use of bandwidth. Think of it, you're at your house, you've got your Comcast, you got your Fios, you got your AT&T high bandwidth, you're gonna encrypt your traffic, you're gonna send it to your office, and then they're gonna then unencrypt it, maybe clean it, and then send it out. That architecture doesn't really work that well, especially if once I get to the corporate network, I can go anywhere I want. So this concept of zero trust, and there's a lot of architectures and marketing architectures out there, but it's really kind of gaining some steam. One use case is when I connect to the internet, I go through some sort of clean pipe scenario. So there's companies like NetScaler, companies like Zscaler. A lot of corporations are replacing their VPN solutions with these solutions. It allows you to put an intrusion detection stack, a logging stack, an authentication stack, basically allow your remote employees to go to where they need to go, whether it's a corporate data center resource or a Gmail, Office 365 or something out there. The other thing it allows them to do is to really have fine-grained access control. When I was doing penetration testing over the last 10, 15 years or so, whenever we'd break into a network, once you got in, you could pretty much go anywhere you want. Zero trust adds another layer where perhaps who you are also dictates where you can go. That same platform that's bringing you to the internet might only bring you to the 5 applications that you're authorized to get to. So different corporations that I've talked to use COVID during this time of COVID to kind of roll out these things, which has a dramatic effect on limiting your attack surface. Now, another thing that happened during this COVID time is we all got a lot more experienced with an organization from the Department of Homeland Security called CISA. CISA is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency led by Chris Krebs. And basically, this organization is designed to do all of the different cybersecurity needs to defend the nation. The White House recently added election security as a critical resource, but most critical resources are things like the banking industry, power industry, telecommunications, the thing the nation needs to run. And this organization did a really, really good job sharing information about how to secure not only elections, but the power grid, really put out a lot of information about anti-disinformation, counter-disinformation, if you will, and it became much more of a household name during this time. And got to work hand in hand with different industries who are broken up into different groups called ISACs, one for the almost every different types of vertical market that you can think of out there. Another thing that happened during the time of COVID is we saw a lot more information from the National Security Agency. Now, for those who haven't been seeing, the National Security Agency basically the DoD introduced an organization called Cyber Command. Cyber Command sits right at Fort Meade, right next to the National Security Agency. It's actually led by the same person, Paul Nakasone, General Nakasone, who runs both of those. But the NSA also added something a while ago called the Cybersecurity Directorate. Now, the Cybersecurity Directorate is a big supporter of what CISA is doing at DHS, but it also has its own public presence. They have a Twitter account. They've been telling people exactly which vulnerabilities they've observed China attacking. They've put out information on 0 days working with the industry, much, much more public than what the NSA has been doing in the past. Cyber Command's also been up to doing a lot of things to protect the country. They've been hacking into other countries. They've been doing things like interdicting Iran, interdicting certain things in Russia. And this has been an interesting development because it's been covered by the media, but since it's not the equivalent of something you can put on TV, typically they just put up a picture of Fort Meade or General Nakasone, and it's a hard thing for the public to understand that this is actually a tool that the United States uses, much akin to deploying an aircraft carrier battle group. If you go back in in time, we've always deployed as a show of force, different types of military things that you can see, touch, and feel. But now our government is actually making use of cyber as a means of political power. And they've been doing so pretty effectively. And I expect it's not something that Obama just did, Trump's been doing, and I expect whoever wins this election to be doing it as well. So, having said all that, where are we going in 2021? Well, I think that right now, one of the things that's going to happen is that we, at both the national level, but also at the individual level, we are going to lose this concept of a common truth. Now, if you look at something like Facebook or Twitter and how they might be highlighting fake news, highlighting things that are controversial, or even telling things like my sister, who's a doctor, she's been discussing COVID with other doctors in a group, and Facebook's told her that they're discussing disinformation, right? So there's a certain sense of the general public. Everybody has a personal story where the AI algorithms on these social media platforms is definitely causing a lot of suspicion about what we're seeing and what we're not seeing. It's the same thing with personal people, though. We have a whole bunch of tribal knowledge now that we're building up our own. The average cybersecurity person I talk to has maybe 10 or 11 Slack channels where they do with either other vendors and their other people they might be in their ecosystem, and they're talking about what they're seeing on a personal level, because a lot of times the information we're seeing from our threat intelligence providers is a little bit different than kind of what we're seeing on the ground. So I expect this sort of duality where we're going to have sort of a national narrative of what vulnerabilities are bad, what's being exploited, what news is out there, what's disinformation. But at the same time, we're also going to have our own sort of talk track of what we're personally doing to have a sense of, do we believe that story? Do we not believe that story? And it's the same thing. I'll give you a personal story, though. If you have a simple piece of malware that gets by an antivirus or perhaps your favorite sandbox, I can probably find 4 or 5 other vendors who have a technology that will tell you how bad that is. So just even the simple fact that right now we can't tell, what is good and what is bad requires us to have sort of these feedback loops with custom threat intelligence providers, custom threat reporters to understand what is really, really going on. So after COVID, once we see this kind of pullback, we are going to have a resurgence in enterprise organizations buying new types of solutions. So the industry hasn't slept, right? Even though we had COVID and we've kind of been put on our back hills, every vendor that I've been involved with, every open source project I've been involved with, they've continued to be developing. Their productivity has gone up tremendously. So when sort of the masks come off, when perhaps there's a vaccine, perhaps when we just get back to work, we are going to realize as an industry that we've actually made some big steps over the last year or so in things like the zero trust, things like endpoint, things like authentication. And I really believe that the enterprise industry is going to be spending money, it's going to be deploying stuff, and it's going to be securing their people who are working from home. I call it an embarrassment of riches. And the thing is, the problem is so hard in large enterprise, they need multiple products. Like you look at a company like Tenable, they actually do asset discovery really, really, really well, but yet now there's a whole new asset discovery industry out there because some large enterprise companies just need to have pure dedicated asset discovery. It's the same thing across the board when you look at identity and access management, when you look at things like firewalls and zero trust, there's more and more sophisticated solutions that are going on. Now, one of the things that's also going to happen when this sort of renaissance takes place is we're going to talk about the cloud in terms of something called DI and not CIA. Now, I mentioned before CIA was confidentiality, integrity, and availability. DI is something called, it's another standard, it's another 3-letter acronym that Sunil, I've stolen from him, he's just such a brilliant guy. The D is for distributed, I is for immutable, and E is for ephemeral. But what this really solves for me is the ability to measure security in the cloud. It used to be that if you look at most of the cybersecurity standards that are out there, you can put a server on here, you can put a server in a data center, and I can tell you how many vulnerabilities it has, if it's configured correctly, if its physical controls are good. You move that same process to the cloud, and whether I'm hosting it on somebody else's platform like Google or Amazon, or I'm just simply don't need to have my own server because I can get the service from Oracle as a SaaS platform or from Salesforce, I can't really measure those things with the same stuff. DIE really allows us to basically understand if all of the cloud goodness stuff that we've done is being done correctly. It kind of gives us the tools to say, do we have the ability to do this? I'll give you a good example. So Amazon's been out there for a while as a platform to allow people to build video games, mobile apps, whatever the corporate applications need. But when Amazon does occasionally have outage, when I had a couple outages, some vendors were not building their applications in a distributed manner. And very few people were asking, hey, when you went to Amazon, did you take advantage of all of their features, all of their reliability, all of their failover? And it just wasn't part of the culture because we've been hearing over and over again that the cloud is secure. Oh, go to the cloud is secure. Well, we have a better model now to take a look at that. So I think there's going to be a lot more people who are building their own apps or using SaaS apps are going to be able to take advantage of this type of acronym. So then lastly, we're going to get into what I think is going to help really, really reshape our cybersecurity industry. So right now, cybersecurity is really dominated by corporations and governments. There is not a really, really large amount of cybersecurity nonprofits. And I do believe that there's a lot of different use cases that cybersecurity nonprofits can handle. In some cases, they can act as a standards body. If you look at something for like the Center for Internet Security, you've got a group of people working across government and vendor industry trying to do it in a very nonpartisan, non-biased manner to pull standards together that are then shared and reviewed. If you look at things like Year Up or Empower, you have organizations pretty much dedicated to taking underserved different communities and teaching them about IT and cybersecurity. There's not businesses in those things. It's just hard to get that stuff going on your own. And sometimes there's government programs in place, but you really need sort of the touch of a nonprofit to get in there. And this is going to really help cybersecurity in two ways. One, it's going to allow us to do a better job of recruiting people to the cybersecurity industry. Now, for those in the cybersecurity industry, we know how great it is in that we've got great career growth. We're really making a difference, protecting people's data. But we're really done a job of basically elevating our best experts as this is kind of what you need to be successful in cyber. And that's really doing basically a disservice. It's just like the medical industry being able to say, if you want to come in the medical industry, you have to be a brain surgeon, right? And somebody's life or death is going to be in your hands. Well, some people are going to like that, obviously people who are brain surgeons, but the average person might not want that kind of responsibility. And this is exactly what it's like in cybersecurity. We tend to go out and say you need to help defend against China, against Russia, against hackers in hoodies, whatever bad analogy you want to throw out there. It actually does a disservice to trying to get people to come in. The other thing that kind of happens as a disservice is the way we talk about it is cybersecurity for non-cyber people. It really is somebody else's problem. If you talk to anybody, a priest, a dentist, a firefighter, anybody who's a professional, even like a lawyer, and you ask them, what do they do for cybersecurity? They will inevitably point to a product, maybe an IT person, and they're going to talk about how their cybersecurity is really somebody else's thing. I've seen boards do this. I've seen issues with how that's done. So I really believe that we can actually solve a lot of this stuff if we talk about our industry a little bit differently. And something my wife and I want to propose is kind of rebranding our industry to something called the data care industry. And this is going to do a number of things. Well, one, anybody who's part of IT, like a help desk, or they're a crypto custodian for a bank, or they're even just provisioning users in HR for an identity management system, they don't feel like they're part of cybersecurity. This allows them to be part of something bigger. It also makes it a lot more easier to recruit people. When you go out and you talk to people, whether it's in a underrepresented community, or maybe you're just trying to get people to think about cybersecurity as a career, you can talk about things as data care. And there's an instant sort of analogy with the healthcare system. We all know there's brain surgeons, there's doctors, there's cardiovascular surgeons, but there's also nurses, there's phlebotomists, there's people who are x-ray technicians. The cybersecurity industry has allowed Hollywood and maybe movies to kind of talk about cyber. Nobody knows who's not in cyber what a SOC operator is, or what a tier 2 incident responder, or what a reverse engineer does, or what a field facility security officer is. Data care allows non-cybersecurity people to basically talk about cybersecurity in a way that might be really recruitful to a young woman, a young African American, somebody who's looking at this all-white male kind of industry and trying to get them inspired to come in. And then lastly, I talk about inspiring. If you have that personal experience where you are talking to, again, a non-cybersecurity professional, a dentist, a priest, a lawyer, and you ask them about cybersecurity and they talk about products and they talk about IT, you can say that, but what do you do to protect your own data? How do you care for your own data? it instantly changes the conversation, and it makes them realize that they've got a role in protecting their data, their customers' data, that they have to care for the data that they're doing. So if you want to learn more about this, the Gula Tech website is gula.tech. We've got a blog where we talk about a lot of these different kind of things. We've written at length about data care, about the cyber poverty line, with a variety of different things. All of our nonprofits that we work with are up there. People like Defending Digital Campaigns, people like Voting Works, as well as our portfolio companies, great companies like Scythe, Bandura, Automox, and they are all part of the adventures that Cindy and I are on. And once again, I'm very, very happy for having the opportunity today to share some thoughts with you. I wish everybody a safe and healthy 2020 and the best of luck in 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Very good, very
Thank
good.
you very much. We just have a few questions here.
Excellent,
So
excellent.
for people who are attending the webinar, you can go to magic.cnf.io and join the, go to the Ron Gula tab, and then you can post questions or upvote just like on Reddit. So we have 4 questions, actually.
Excellent.
So the first one is, are there tellers in the past that will help understand what's going to happen in the future of this industry?
So are there tellers in the past that are going to help us do the future? So a lot of what I talked about today was things that were happening that might influence the future. So I really believe that once we get past this election, there will be some legislation passed that is going to impact how we do things like more secure voting, more secure procurement of IoT devices. Like, I'm sure this thing's probably hackable somehow, right? But there, believe it or not, there's very few standards for that. And I think there's also going to be some tellers from the past about privacy. So when I was at the NSA in the early 90s, we tried to put something out called the Clipper chip. And the Clipper chip was basically a way to have privacy, but the government had a guaranteed backdoor. And then in the 90s, it didn't really go too well. Privacy people kind of wore out. I think today, in this day and age, people want the government involved, and they want the ability to have access to that data. So I think there's going to be a lot of that in the future.
Excellent response. Thank you. And thank you for asking that question. Next question, how do U.S. companies rank in the world for cybersecurity preparedness?
So I think U.S. companies rank pretty well because we actually have a lot of standards where people disclose what they're doing. So for example, any public company, for example, not only is there governance from a board and a fiduciary experience, you can actually read how Amazon protects their data or Salesforce protects their data when they do it. Now, it's not as much technical detail, but there's enough in there you can get a sense. That's how people know that, like, you know, JP Morgan spends almost $1 billion on their defenses. Plus, when there is an incident, they are required to disclose. It's not like that everywhere in the world, right? So when you do have an incident, there's typically a mea culpa where the company comes out and they share information about what happened. A really good example of this is Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a great company. They're a Defending Digital Campaigns partner, but they help people protect websites. They had a couple outages, and they were very open about how they did it. Sort of the same way maybe as after an airplane crash. There's a lot of transparency. Was it pilot error? Was there an issue with the mechanics? We're getting like that in the cybersecurity industry.
Interesting. And this next question is sort of related, and maybe this comes from the perspective of a business struggling with this, but are U.S. companies held to a higher standard than businesses in other countries when it comes to compliance and regulations?
So I hear that occasionally. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to say if you're in Australia, are you lesser than here in the U.S.? Because at the end of the day, you know, one of the things we did at Tenable is we could take all these standards, right? So the NSA at Australia is ASD, the Australian Signals Directorate. You have GCHQ over in England. But if you kind of wrote down everything you have to do to kind of be compliant with like the NIST cybersecurity framework, it's pretty similar across the board. Now, there's some exceptions. So for example, with PCI, they want to protect your credit card data. You lose my credit card, that's a big PCI violation. If I shut your business down or take your website down, they're not as concerned about that because I can't steal your data at that point. So you're going to see small variations in that across the board, but most of this stuff is very, very similar. And I recommend people go to the Center for Internet Security. They have a couple really interesting ways to basically talk about, if you're only going to do a few things, what are the most important things, all the way up to if you're defending from the Russians or the Iranians, what's a level 3 thing you have to do.
Right. Yeah, PCI, that brings back some PTSD for me as an e-commerce entrepreneur many years ago. And the last question we've got here is DIE, which you spoke about in your presentation. Is it like a cybersecurity blockchain?
Yeah, so I should give more props to Sunil Yu. So Sunil Yu is a friend of ours. He used to be the head of, I think, cyber futures for Bank of America. And he has a talk that I've seen him give a couple times where he talks about this change in managing servers and managing applications that you can see, touch, and feel because they're in your data center to this cloud. And the fact is that we already have technology, things like two-factor authentication where your PIN disappears. We all know that when Netflix drops a new show, servers spin up and come down. Well, this is taking place with all of our corporations. Every organization is a software company. Every organization is taking advantage of the cloud, but they're still using the old ways of counting vulnerabilities, counting IP addresses. DIE it's more of a concept than like a technical standard, but it's probably the best way I've seen to ask people, have them think about, is their investment in the cloud as secure as they think it is?
Excellent. Well, we don't have any more questions. That will conclude our keynote session and Q&A session with Mr. Ron Gula. Ron, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Fist bump, right? There we go.
And we will go to a 5-minute break, so please stretch your legs and come right back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.